Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for having me. For those of you who don't know me, I was here 5 days before the election, campaigning, I guess. I'm Jim Brochin, and I'm the senator for the 42nd District, which now starts, believe it or not, on the city-county line and comes up here to the Pennsylvania line. And I have everything west of Manor Road, and Senator Jennings has everything east of Manor Road and goes partially into Harford County also. But before I begin, I do want to give a shout out to Senator Jennings and Delegate Aumann. JB and I have been friends for a long time, and he's doing a great job as minority leader. And he's fighting the Democrats hard, which is what you want to hear and which is the truth. And he wins, and he probably has more respect across the aisle than any other minority leader I've seen since I've been there. It's great to have him there. And Delegate Aumann and I have been serving together for 13 years now. And she's great. She's doing a great job in the House. So I just wanted to come by and, first of all, say hi and compliment you on the way you start your meetings. Senator Jennings and I were saying that Democratic meetings are definitely started in a different manner, and the patriotism here, and it's good to see. In my 13 years in the Senate, I've never seen a more partisan effort on both sides. I've never seen more congeniality, and I've seen more balanced government. And if you know me or you know my reputation, I think balanced government works best. And I'm not afraid to tell you as a Democrat that I like the fact we have a Republican governor now and a Democratic legislature. I like the checks and balances. I like the fact that there's not abuse of power from the left wing of my party that's been shut down. And believe it or not, I have colleagues who are from Montgomery County, who are friends of mine on the Democratic aisle, who pull me aside and say, you know what, I would never say this publicly, but I really like the fact we have a Republican governor. And I think Larry Hogan's doing a good job. And more importantly, what I promised you when I ran for re-election to this seat, I wanted to let you know that I feel like I've fulfilled, which is supporting the governor on economic issues and actually on most of the social issues also. And the key thing that I wanted to point out to you that I stood with Senator Jennings and the Republicans on, I guess it was the last day of session, was the GCEI issue, which I want to talk about really briefly. The GCEI is the Geographical Cost Index. It's an additional pot of money that's discretionary for governors to give to public education. And it's always been discretionary money. And my party on the last day of session didn't like the way the budget negotiations were going with the governor and decided to take this discretionary money and make it mandatory and force the governor to fund this GCEI at 100%. And if he didn't fund it at 100%, they would make it mandatory permanently, or was it just for 1 year, JB? Permanently. So he would have to take this additional pot of money, which is $150 million, have no discretion, make the mandatory parts of spending in the budget over 80%, which would literally cripple the governor's hands in the time of a recession or anything like that, and force him to fund this geographic cost index at 100%. O'Malley's first year of office, the GCEI, he funded it at 0%. In his second year of office, he funded it at 30%. O'Malley also inherited a $1 billion surplus from Bob Ehrlich, and Larry Hogan inherited a $700 million structural deficit from Martin O'Malley. I'm sounding like a Republican more and more all the time, aren't I? It's fascinating. So, does anybody have a registration? JB's always trying to give me a registration all the time. So the point is this, and I just came here to tell you more than anything, that I'm cognizant of this, that I listened to both sides, and that word, because when it came time to filibuster and the Republicans were filibustering, I stood up and the Senate President looked at me and I said, Mr. President, I'd like to speak now. And he looked at me and he said, well, which side are you on? And I pointed to JB and the Republicans and I said, I'm on their side. And I supported the Republicans. I was the only Democrat in the whole Senate who supported the Republicans, filibustered with the Republicans, and tried to stop the Democrats from doing what they've done. And the problem, and one of the frustrations I have in Annapolis, is they have this famous line that Delegate Aumann and Senator and I have been so used to, which is "It's for the children," which is really tough to stomach, because what my thought is if we go into another recession, which is possible, I look at the children of of parents who have disabilities, because that's what would have to be cut. I look at Medicaid funding, which is the last resort of health care for some people, and that's what would have to be cut. And to hold, and this was my key point, and this is what I said, and it was actually on BAL radio all the next day, and it's been on frequently, is you held this governor to a different standard than you held Valley to. And for me, that was intolerable, and that's what crossed the line. So I stood with the Republicans on that. I was proud to do it. When it comes time to, hopefully Hogan will veto the bill, and when it comes time to override, I will vote to sustain that veto, and I will stay with the Republicans. Real quickly, two other issues, and then I take any questions before I have to go grab my daughter. We repealed something that didn't get a lot of press. I spent a lot of time with Senator Riley of Ann Arbor. It was one of the biggest waste of monies I've seen in years, and finally, since the chairman of my committee, Brian Frost, is now the Attorney General, he didn't like the bill, but our new chairman, Bobby Zirkin, supported it, which is we repealed the ballistic fingerprinting requirement, which I have never seen a bigger waste of money. Every time there's a crime, you had to literally get the fingerprint of the shell, and it was going into these, and it was the shell casing had to be preserved in the basement of the state police headquarters. They had 325,000 shell casings, and they had 4 full-time state police personnel going through them. And out of 325,000 shell casings that started under Paris Glendenin's administration, they found 26 matches out of 325,000. And out of those matches, it led to 0 convictions. So, I mean, this was something that had been gnawing at me for quite a while. Senator Riley brought it to my committee. I told him I would help him with it. I did help him with it. I helped get it through the House on the House of Delegates on the last day, and we got it through. And the best thing is that those 4 state troopers who were doing this and literally getting nothing out of it are now doing rape kits. They're doing DNA testing, so their pins have been preserved, but they're doing things within the infrastructure of the state police. They're actually going to help people. So that's a good thing. 2 more things I want to mention real quickly. And this is one area where some of you may disagree with me on, but I feel very strongly about this, is I signed on to a bill and got a bill passed regarding fracking. And I want to make it as difficult as possible for fracking to occur in the state. And what I did is I signed onto a strict liability piece of legislation that says that if you choose to frack in this state and you get a permit and there's any kind of accident that occurs that fouls up the drinking water, that causes earthquakes. You know, Oklahoma had 80 earthquakes in 130 years, and in the last 18 months they've had 800 earthquakes, or any of these other things. Then if there is a causation, if you prove that the fracking caused foul or polluted drinking water, you are strictly liable, which means you're guilty and you have to pay. I look at what happened in Jacksonville, which wasn't in my district at the time, with the Exxon spill. This part of the district is new to me, but I feel very, very strongly it's beautiful up here. There's nothing like North County, and the only way to preserve, I believe, the way of life environmentally is to do everything we can to deter fracking, and I'm going to stand by that one. The last thing is this, and Harold mentioned the Baltimore City riots, and all of us have been transfixed to our television sets. I just wanted to give you a perspective, the way I see it, and after listening to it. You know, I've been sitting in the Judicial Proceedings Committee for 12 years, and I have watched Baltimore City for the last 2 or 3 years pay out claim after claim after claim from rogue police officers who don't think it's enough just to cuff somebody. And believe me, the people that they cuff, the suspects who commit crime, should be cuffed, should be prosecuted, and should serve the biggest sentence we can give them. But once you have somebody cuffed, you don't have to smash their face into a windshield. You don't have to break their arm. You don't have to assault an 87-year-old grandmother, which is what they've done in numerous other things. And they paid out $5.6 million in claims over the last couple of years, and there's a heck of a lot more incidents that we don't know about that haven't been reported. And at the end of the day, I look at this pretty simplistically. I think that 10% of the police officers are ruining it for the other 90% who go to work, wear the badge with pride, do their job, go home to their families, and treat suspects with respect and adhere to what we adhere to in the Constitution that's read and the principle of the Constitution, which is you're innocent until proven guilty. And once you have a suspect in handcuffs, that's it. They're not going anywhere. They're not grabbing your gun. They're not doing anything. And they've ruined it for the other 90%. And enough people have been abused where, this is what the result is. And likewise, I don't like how the mayor reacted. I don't like the way the police chief reacted. I don't care that the word thug isn't politically correct, but if you are looting and you are setting fires, I think you're a thug, and I think you should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And just like 10% of the police officers are ruining it for the other 90% are doing what they want, 10% of the citizens of Baltimore City are ruining it for the hardworking people in Baltimore City, both black and white, that are doing their jobs, paying their taxes, and want to live in a decent society. And that's the way I look at the situation. It's not going away anytime soon, but I really don't think this is a race issue. I think this is a police issue, and it's a police issue that's abused its power. I can tell you that JB and I and Sue and I have a lot of interaction with the state police. The state police don't act this way. They don't. They're trained. There's a professionalism there. There's a standard. There's a code of conduct. And in Baltimore County, it's the same way. But in Baltimore City, I don't know how they hire. I've asked questions for years, and the mayor and her people have told me to mind my own business, which is fine. They can say whatever they want. But this has come to roost, and you can't treat people. You can't abuse your power and your position any more than we could abuse our power. Anybody who employs anybody could or interacts with people. And that's just how I view it. And I think it's going to be a long, tough summer. And I hope that at the end we end up better on the other side of it. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions before I roll. There's a couple. Yes, sir.
I got two, but I just want to mention that there have been handcuffs.
Listen, don't forget to save some for JB and Sue, okay? Go ahead.
I do want to mention that handcuff suspects have in fact pulled up. Those are contradictory points, but on that one technical.
Okay.
So, part of, would you support a repeal or reform of the law enforcement officers' Bill of Rights?
Okay, so that's a great question. So the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights has come to my committee, and I listened to it many times. And there are some things that I think are fair to police officers that I wouldn't repeal, but there is one thing that I think needs to be repealed, and that's if you are apprehended and you're in front of a liquor store, and we'll use you as and you're in front of a liquor store and you walk out something and they say you didn't, they're going to question you immediately, and you don't have the right to delay that questioning for 10 days. Under the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights, and I think Roger knows this when he was county executive, they have up to 10 days not to answer any questions and not to give a statement. I think everybody should be put on the same playing field. So that section of the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights, I would want to repeal. As far as the other things, I would do exactly what I've been doing in Annapolis for 13 years, which is I want to listen to both sides. I want to listen to the merit of the argument. But look, I'm not going to lie to you. There are things that are happening in Baltimore City and some abuses that police officers have done, that horrible 10% have done, that are going to make me ask a heck of a lot more questions and maybe tip the scales on certain things like the 10 days. Sure.
Can you tell us what it was?
I have. There are 1,300. There were 1,100 bills. I have no idea. I'm sorry. Yes.
Two big highway sailing one that comes to mind, and I know which one of them debated and stuff, but I'd like to understand these two comes on. One is the fetal pain bill, which would ban abortion after the fifth month of pregnancy. The second is really highway sailing in other parts of the country like Indiana. This will allow people to make decisions if they're shopping or flower shopping or make wedding days. Should they be able to make a decision if they're approached to do a homosexual wedding?
Okay. I'll be happy to answer both of them. So on the fetal pain bill, it hasn't come to my committee. I haven't seen it. I haven't read it. The devil's in the details, so I can't give you an answer until I see it. As far as, I'm sorry, what was the second one you just talked about? Oh, Yeah, I mean, I thought we were pretty clear when we passed the same-sex marriage bill that we put an exemption on there, a conscience clause exemption. And I'm seeing Delegate Aumann shake her head yes. That we don't compel anybody to do anything like that. And if a piece of legislation came in and it was the shop owner and the cake, I would certainly say that a baker should not be compelled to bake a cake for a same-sex wedding if they have a conscience clause there.
They would still have to enforce legislation.
Yeah,
What you're saying in Maryland, they wouldn't have to enforce.
No, there's a conscience clause in the sexual orientation. But let me say one other thing, a social issue that I actually voted with the Republicans on that was conservative, which is there was a transgender bill that came out this year that said that you can change your birth certificate and you can change your birth certificate to change your name if you've had a transgender operation. And I think I was the only Democrat also that voted with the Republicans because I don't think you should be able to wipe your identity out if you take the transgender aside. And somebody said to me, they're like, well, what if you owe child support and all of a sudden you're a different person? Like, how are they even going to track you down? Which I thought was a good point. But anyway, I vote on that. Yes, sir.
Right now, they
The state, right, JB? Yeah, the state of Maryland. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna save that for Senator Jennings. Okay. I mean, I can tell you that years ago, before I was your senator, they'd had a bill. They had a law in place that gave told illegals that they could get driver's licenses here without any ID or with a national card. And I worked out a compromise about 6 or 7 years ago that takes effect this year that says that it ends. Now, Victor Ramirez from Prince George's County put a little thing in there that said if you can show you paid taxes over the last 2 years and actually show tax returns, you can get a driver's license. But I would tell you that that's not going to happen very often, and that there aren't national magazines and it's not on the internet that you can come and get a driver's license in Maryland anymore. So I would tell you that I don't think we're the sanctuary state that we were, and I can tell you that under this governor, you're not going to see that, and you're not going to see any tax increases. So, I mean, I think we're better than we were 5 or 6 years ago, but I would still tell you that we probably have a long way to go. I have no idea. I'm going to leave that one for Senator Jennings also. Okay. Well, yes.
Just a point of interest. Right about the time I left office, the city relaxed their requirements. And it wasn't long after that you saw police officers getting more involved in crime-related issues in the city.
Yeah.
If I were a member of the legislature and what's been happening, I want to see what the requirements are that the various jurisdictions have for police officers, i.e. the Baltimore city at the time, they were letting people with phone records.
Yeah. He's right.
Baltimore County before that was in Baltimore City. So they rely on cheating there. I think the three of you should at least consider that as you move forward to say, even though individual jurisdictions have rights, at some point in time you have to say, are they admitted among the state's ability?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's an excellent point. I mean, and we did it with the kids, these people who work in juvenile. It used to be that you could work with these kids in juvenile facilities if you had a high school education. In my second year of office, I helped change the law to say you had to have a minimum of a college degree in order to work with these kids. Maybe we could phase something in like that, but I mean, clearly, Roger's 100% right. I mean, the standards have been watered down, and I'm telling you, this is not a black-white issue. This is a blue issue. And 10% of the police officers have made it intolerable for the 90% in Baltimore City that are doing the right thing. And when I mean intolerable, you beat enough suspects and you abuse enough suspects, and there's going to be a lot of anger and a lot of mistrust, and that's what's blown everything away. I got to run and pick up my daughter, but I thank you very much. We appreciate it. I know we're from different parties, but I'm really proud to represent this area, and I'm proud to represent you guys, and thank you.
Sue has to leave us in emergency conditions, so we're letting her go next.
Thank you. It's really great to be back. I really appreciate it. This year's General Assembly session was a gift. It was the first time, I think, that I've ever seen many people cooperate across the aisles to try to get good things to happen to our state. Why? Because there was an uproar that you brought forward saying enough of the taxes, enough of hurting people, enough of stifling businesses. And so we got a new governor. Now, it's not a cakewalk for this man. He's had a lot of challenges and continues to have challenges. And next year is probably going to be a little bit more challenging. But you have a role to play, and I just want to urge you to continue to be involved. We need to hear your voices because this is not over. You think, okay, we won the election, everything's going to be great. There are still many people in the legislature who want to increase your taxes, who want to increase your fees, who want to make it harder for businesses to come into the state of Maryland. We need letters in the paper. We need people to get involved in things and have your voices heard. So please, I urge you, don't sit back. Continue to be as proactive as you had been during the election and step it up a little bit. Governor Hogan needs these voices to be heard, and he needs to know that he's got a following that's going to sit there and resist these additional attacks on our liberties in the form of taxes and fees, because they're still going to try to. And Senator Brochin just said was that in the very end of the session, there was some disagreements about how the budget went, and they forced this GCEI, $150 million. Well, Governor Hogan wanted to come in with a budget that completely cleared up the structural deficit, completely changed the diagram to say that we have no more structural deficit and we will be able to afford what we spend. We will raise enough money and spend enough money and have a little bit left over to save. But you have instances where people want to continue to get what they want, and they do it because they can, and that's why we need all of you to get involved and say, no more of this stuff. We have to stand up for it, or we're going to lose our liberties. I had a very interesting session. It started out, and Senator Jennings can also talk about this. In the Hereford zone, we had a school system that had a 4 scheduled block. And those kids really enjoyed it, and they really did a really fantastic job. So they had 4 classes per day, and that's something that they had enjoyed for, I think, over 20-some years or whatever. And all of a sudden, Dr. Dance came in and decided by fiat that he's going to change the entire schedule of every Baltimore County school to an 8 scheduled class day. So we put in legislation to try to say, please, you wouldn't listen to the people. They tried to get your attention. They asked for you to come out and talk to them, and he entertained 2 people out of 100 and some people that were trying to get his attention. That's just wrong, okay? So he goes down to Annapolis, and because we're getting a lot of support to this, it passed through the Baltimore County delegation, I think on the House side and the Senate side, it was going to the committee. Because it had passed out of the delegation, Dr. Dance came down and talked to Chairman Hickson and said, oh, no, we don't want this. We don't want this. That's wrong, too. We have a responsibility to be in the General Assembly to represent our people and to bring things to light. For the county representative to come down and change the rules of the game, it's not like I can go to his school board meeting and say, oh, no, we're going to have recess for 15 more minutes. That's not going to happen. But yet he can come down and change the diagram and the parameters of things that we're fighting for that passed out of our Baltimore County delegation. So that was one that still kind of spit me fired up. The second thing was we put in legislation for the Eastern Sanitary Landfill. There's a community that's really close by there, and there were some conversations in the past that talked about these houses, because of where their location is. We wanted to give them a tax credit in case they wanted to sell, because people aren't going to buy that property because of the smell and the noise and so forth. County made arrangements with, I think, Harford County to bring in their trash and to sort it all out, which is a lot more movement and activity. So we asked for a tax credit, enabling legislation for the county council to decide whether or not they wanted to give a tax credit to these particular residents on particular roads. Well, Kamenetz had a hissy fit. You know what Kamenetz did? He decided to try to find the parents of school members that go to Delaney High School and Hereford High School and say, oh, you're not going to get your expansion because these bad delegates and senators want to take the money away from you. Okay? What the heck are you talking about? That's not the way that you come back and legislate. So he went behind the scenes and made this. He sent letters out to these. You probably read some of this in the newspaper. He sent letters out to these parents. These parents were like, what are you talking about? Well, it kicked back in his face, and I'm glad, because I stood up in the Baltimore delegation, and I said that this was the rawest piece of monarchy that I've ever seen in my entire life, and that I think the county executive owes everyone in this delegation a letter of apology. Do you think we got it? No. So, I mean, we're dealing with people that have that don't understand that we're trying to do a job too. But we're not sending letters to their parents saying, oh, these bad people, they may put out legislation. It's enabling legislation for the county council to make a decision on whether or not these people deserve a tax credit or not. But yet he felt threatened, and this is the way he came out and did it. Really crazy. But remember that. This is this man's character, and it's a flaw, and it's not a good one. He doesn't represent his people, and if he's going behind things and attacking in this way, it's just wrong. But the other pieces of legislation that I think that we were really happy about, well, really wasn't even a piece of legislation. Many of you may know the Carol Morris story, who had a lovely farm called Morris Meadows up in North County. And she had harvested some of her timber, and because they crossed a stream or something, I mean, she was, in 2007, won the Conservation Award. Baltimore County came out and decided to impose a fee on them for $120,000. It was absolutely criminal. So I went down to Baltimore County with them and talked to Vince Gardenia's office and said, you know, what are you trying to do? You're trying to really destroy these people? Are you trying to hurt their livelihood? They're harvesting their timber because they need the money. They're harvesting their timber because they need the money, and you're going to assess this crazy fine to them. Well, they reduced the fine. But what Mrs. Morris wanted was to make sure that the websites for the Forest Service and for DNR had explicit directions for anybody who actually went out and harvested their own property, that they knew the certified harvesters were and the protocol that you have to go through. And I was really glad to work with DNR and the Forestry Service to get that information on the website. So I think that was a real good win for them. The second piece of legislation I worked hard on regarded human trafficking. And it's a felony if the trafficker uses individuals that are under the age of 18 for the sex trade. But sometimes those children that have reached the age of majority of 18 have been doing it for many, many years because they didn't know any better, and they've gotten into the cycle of, dependence on this pimp. But I try to put in legislation to say if you're over the age of 18 to 25 and you are in a situation of human trafficking, that pimp will now have to face a felony. We had a great testimony, but Joe Valerio, who's the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, doesn't like felony types of law, so we're going to keep the pressure up, and I'll probably introduce that again. But please, if I could just beg you, continue to stay involved. It's really important. We need your voices out there. don't just feign back and think everything's good, because Larry Hogan has having a fight of his life, and you're right, it's going to cost more money to put the National Guard out in Baltimore City to protect those storefront owners and those people in that area. And and along this backdrop, one of the things that he really wanted to promote was, keeping businesses and attracting businesses in Maryland. How many of you know that he was able to retain McCormick in Maryland? I mean, that was a big, but it was kind of overshadowed. I mean, it happened on Wednesday. It was kind of overshadowed because, pardon? Yeah. So, I mean, it's just, we're doing good things. We just need to make sure that we have the right attitudes and your attitudes to continue to fight against individuals who don't understand what it means to be free. And if we let these types of things happen, where we're strapped financially because we have this spendthrift mindset, we're all going to be impacted. So I really appreciate you coming, being here tonight.
You talked about the landfill and the houses. Which was there first, the houses or the landfill?
The houses.
And then the county came in with the landfill then?
Yep. He probably knows a little bit more. I just wanted to tell you what happened in the Baltimore County delegation and how it was circumvented.
There's been talk about should work. I mean, do you think that idea people on our side might be brought it?
I don't know at this point. I don't know.
There was a simple forfeiture reform that went through the legislature this year. I think all but two of the Republicans voted against it, and one of them was the new railroad drug law. And I think the second was
Bob Cassidy in the Senate.
Can you tell me why the Republican caucus was opposed to the reform?
I think on the part of Robin Grammer, and this is all I can speak to, is that in the General Assembly we had 60 new members that came through, and it's daunting when you first get there and there's a lot of information going on. And I believe in the first couple of weeks, Robin was really trying to read everything that he could possibly read to understand it. And if he didn't get it, if he didn't understand it, he would just vote no. So it wasn't that he may have been really against it. It was just that he wasn't prepared to answer yes. Okay, try to see. Okay. I can't answer that. I'm sorry. I don't know. You'll have to ask him. I don't know.
My question is why the caucus voted, not you voted. You have to vote. Why did the caucus vote for it?
Tell me a little bit about the bill.
Reform is added several restrictions on what the police could seize. We've added the restrictions for giving them. They require them to either charge the individual in a certain time frame or release the funds they received. It's prohibited from certain vendors of the law, like the federal negligent sharing, and it has a number of reporting requirements so that the government's office of crime control.
Crime control and prevention. Yeah. Okay.
So, the information on statistics on what we do, how we do, how often people get charged.
And thank you. I appreciate it. 1,100 bills is a lot to keep in mind. That, you're absolutely right. What happens is that sometimes items get confiscated or seized, the person is released, and then it takes such a long period of time for them to get their goods back, if at all. And this bill would allow them to have a better control over getting their items back if they were not charged. And that needed to happen because a lot of things were... Again, I don't think so.
Bob Cassidy voted against it. He voted against the bill because of what he does for a living as an attorney and what his brother, who's the state's attorney in Harford County. And I agree with what Sue had said. We did support it. So I'll review that.
Can you, either of you, both of you, explain why it is that Baltimore keeps saying that they need a bill from the state in order to hold the police in Baltimore accountable for their actions? That Senator Wellman's late is going on saying, oh, well, we asked the state to do this, why is it that the city can't do, in its own jurisdiction, what they're asking the state to do on state level?
Well, I'm going to let JB, because he probably knows more about the...
Did you want to say goodbye?
Yeah. I'm going to say goodbye. I have relatives from Germany that are here tonight for dinner, and I just wanted to come by and say hi. I appreciate it. But you guys have my information, and if I can help you in any way, please give me a call or contact. And thank you very kindly.
Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. I am Senator J.B. Jennings. I represent the 7th District, which is pretty much everything on the east side of 83, all the way through in Harford County. I am the minority leader in the Senate, so I get to shepherd the Republicans and the Republican agenda. This session was much different than the last 8. Last 8 we had a Democratic governor that it was easy that we just literally would lob, bombs at him all the time, beating him up on issues, and it was easy just to sit there and do that. The table's changed. My job now is to defend this governor and work with our governor and get him in the past. So my job was I thought it was going to be easy, but it wasn't. It was pretty hard because, not only am I fighting with the Democrats on their issues, but I'm trying to bring them over to our side to help the governor. So we did work pretty hard on a lot of issues. I'm going to answer your 2 questions that you asked earlier, but let me go through what I wanted to talk about real briefly, which was the budget. This governor, he was elected pretty much on the mandate of doing away with all these tax credits. The tax increases that the last administration had put through. People were tired of it. They had had enough. It hit their pocketbooks. That enough's enough. So Governor Hogan came in and said he's going to do his best to deal with it. Day one, he inherited about a $750 million deficit that he had to bring under control. When he sat down and he looked at it, he said, hey, I would like to do tax cuts, but we can't do tax cuts when we're still in the red. So what he said was, year one, let's deal with the structural. We're not going to do any tax cuts year one. Instead, let's get the structural deficit under control. By doing that, he sat down. You have to realize, he was handed Governor O'Malley's administration's budget that they had worked on for about 8 months. And he had roughly 20 days to review it, make his changes before it had to be introduced. He had to introduce a budget the day after he was sworn in the governor's office. So there's a couple of things that what he did was he said, hey, this GCEI that Senator Brochin had mentioned, Governor Ehrlich never funded it. Governor O'Malley, year one, he funded it at 0%. Year two, he funded it at 30%. And then finally, on year 3, he bumped up to 100%. So Governor Hogan said, hey, this is discretionary money. I'm going to do the best I can. I'm only going to fund it at 50%. He also looked at the state employees that Governor O'Malley, on his way out, one of his last days, signed for a pay raise, a 2% pay raise, which is great to do. It's like, we're going to dinner and I'm getting ready to leave. I said, by the way, they'll take a nice bottle of champagne, and I walk out the door. So the governor said, hey, Hogan said, I can't support that 2% increase at this point. So the way he was going to balance the budget structurally was fund GCEI 50%, do away with this 2% COLA increase that these state employees got. Legislature got a hold of it. The Dems fought it, said this education is number one. We got to increase it to 100. They worked on issues back and forth. When it was all said and done, he was able to bring our structural deficit under control. With his original bill he put in was about 74% was taken care of in this year. So they only had about 26% left next year. Unfortunately, through the process, the Dems took it back to about a 68 to 69% fixing of the deficit with some of the stuff they did. Now, we do have this bill looming out there dealing with this GCEI, which it's kind of, I stood there scratching my head on the floor saying, so you have a bill that tells me that this discretionary money that I have to spend, if I spend all of it at 100%, then this bill will go away. But if I don't spend it, then you're going to pass this bill forcing me to spend it at 100%. It made no sense. How can you say it's discretionary and you're asking me? So that the governor has looming over his shoulders right now, what he's going to do to deal with this GCEI bill that these Democrats want to spend this money. And what the GCEI does is it's Geographical Cost of Educational Index that it looks at all the counties. It says, what does it cost to educate a child in the county? So, for instance, Montgomery County, starting teacher, I think, makes in the high 30s. So it's expensive to educate Montgomery County versus Somerset County, one of our state's poorest counties. I think it's starting teachers in the high 20s. So it's much cheaper to educate them there. So Montgomery County gets more money through this GCEI versus Somerset to get zero. So these counties each get like another $5-6 million. The big counties, which is Montgomery, Baltimore City, Baltimore County. So that's why these counties are fighting for this money. And the thing that's driving me crazy when you hear their rhetoric is, if we don't get this money, it means we're going to have to lay off 100 teachers. How come it's always the teachers? How come it's never administrators? They're the ones that are making six figures when you get up in these high-level positions. Baltimore County's stacked pretty deep down there at off of Charles Street, where our Board of Education is, with the amount of administrators that are there. Plus, there's other places they can cut and trim the state budget. The one that drives me crazy is, most recently, is looking at running the buses. I think the county school system's second highest expense is fuel. Fuel's gone down about $1 in the last year and a half, and they do these large contracts. So if they're spending almost 20% less on fuel, then where did that money go? So it drives me crazy. So that's what, one of the big issues I worked on this session was brokering the governor's agenda, his bills. In the end, we got the budget through. We all the Republicans in the Senate voted for it when it originally came in, but after the committees got to it, the conference committee, and changed it between the House and the Senate, we wound up voting against it because it took it from 74% covered to 69%, and it blew out the pension reform that we were trying to deal with. He got charter school bill through, which was not as strong as we wanted it, but we were able to work with unions, and well, they didn't want to work at all. They kind of went over their head and did it anyway, which was great because we were able to get the Democrats on our side on that issue. But I want to answer a couple of these questions that came up. So this tax credit for the Eastern Sanitary Landfill, the community around it, that's in my district. It was my bill. It's something I fought for 2 years for this community. So Eastern Sanitary Landfill's off of Route 40 down on eastern Baltimore County. The community had been there for years. A gentleman sold the land to the county in the late 70s. The county decided to put a landfill in there in the early 80s because I think Texas was going to be closed right to Cockeysville, which was a landfill. So they were moving stuff, so they decided to open this one out on the eastern side. They went to the community, told them they were going to do it. The landfill had a life expectancy of 25 years at that point. The community has dealt with it for 25 years. So what's happened now is, with recycling efforts, there's not as much trash going into this landfill, so it's now extended the life another 15 to 20 years. So this community now has to deal with it. Additionally, Harford County had a waste-to-energy facility that was located at Aberdeen Proving Grounds at the Edgewood Arsenal, where they were taking all their trash, burning it, turning it into energy. Edgewood wants that ground back, so the county had to find something else to do with their trash. So they're taking it down to the port, and it's going to go on barges and be shipped out to, I think, New Jersey or somewhere. But the problem was they didn't have a facility to do this. So they entered into a contract with Baltimore County to use the Eastern Sanitary Landfill, that all the trash trucks from Harford County will come into this landfill. They'll dump their trash. It'll then be loaded on tractor trailers and driven down to Curtis Bay, is I think where the facility is, where it's going to be put on the barge. Now this community has to deal with all these trucks coming in there. And we've tried working with the county, saying, work with this community. It's 104 houses. Some of these houses, when you go in them, their yards, they actually have methane pipes to release the methane gas. One house in particular does have methane meters inside of it. because, if you think back, things have changed the way we do landfills nowadays. Prior, years ago, they just buried everything and plowed it under. Now you have liners and all that stuff. So it was an issue I was trying to fight for my community, a community that I represent, just like I would fight for all of you if you came to me on an issue. Now, the one thing that's kind of gotten lost in the whole argument with the county executive and why he was wrong with the letter that he wrote to the community or to the school, the parents of the children, saying that I can't fund your school projects, I put in the bill that it's enabling legislation for the county council to look at. It doesn't say how much. It could be they could give them a 5% reduction in their property tax, or up to 100. It's up to them. But it requires them to increase the tipping fee for Harford County for whatever tax credit they're going to give. So it doesn't cost the county another dime. It doesn't cost us anything. It just increases the tipping fee for Harford County. So that got lost in the argument. And the issue, I will tell you, the bill had no chance in hell when I first put it in. But I was fighting for my community. I'm doing my best. When the county executive did what he did with that letter to that family or to those parents, infuriated all the senators and all the delegates from Baltimore County. They all jumped on board. And in the end, the bill passed. Now, is it going to go anywhere? No, because the county executive is steadfast in the fact that he said he will veto any tax credit that comes to him on that. And I understand his argument that, hey, if you live next to a fire station or if you live next to a jail, you're going to want a tax credit. But I also put stipulations in the bill that, number one, they had to be owner-occupied. They couldn't be rentals. Number two, you had to have owned the house prior to the contract with the county being signed, which was in 2013, June of 2013. And then three, that this tax credit sunsets when they can't contract with Harford County. So that's what the bill was. Is it going to go anywhere? Probably not, because the county executive is steadfast and he's against it. So I'm still trying to work with the community, try and help them out some, because it's, not only do you have the smell of the landfill and all the trash, those little trash bags you get at the grocery store that blow into their houses, but the roar of these trucks. And I actually live about 8 miles up the road, and I've gone in there a couple times and watched. Imagine how many trash trucks you have going into Texas every day dumping. That's what they've got coming back to their community. So that's why I did that bill. The second thing you had asked was regarding that going on in Baltimore City. I'm actually in the Air National Guard. We have a drill weekend this weekend, and we've been told, bring your bags for the night, because there's a good chance they might keep us. So under National Guard, when you're in the National Guard, you can go on what are two types of orders, what are Title 10 and Title 32. The active duty and the reserve component of the military cannot be used for stateside emergencies. It actually came out of the Civil War. It was called Posse Comitatus, was the law that was passed that kept, because after the Civil War, they kept soldiers down in the South, and they tried to push them out, and they passed this law. So the only unit, the military component that can actually be used is the National Guard. And for them to be activated, only a governor can do it. The president can't say, oh, there's an emergency, I'm sending in National Guard. It's got to be the governor that activates them. And he activates them under what's called Title 32 orders. Title 32 means you fall under state, you're working for the state. So if I get activated, or the men and women that have been activated now for the Army National Guard are falling under Title 32, which means the state picks up their salary. Now, if they get picked to go to, Iraq or Afghanistan, that's under Title 10 orders, which is regular military orders, and the U.S. government pays for them. Now, who's paying the bill down there? I can tell you that the governor has tried talking to FEMA about getting assistance, and rarely, this is what I've been told, rarely does FEMA give assistance for, I forgot how they termed it, but rioting, because it's a man-made disaster. It's different if it's a hurricane or a tornado or a blizzard, but this is the way that FEMA and the federal government sees it. This is a man-made disaster, the way that we managed and handled our people to cause this. Why should they pick up the bill? So unfortunately, it looks like we're going to have to eat this. Now, the thing that I'm working on now to find out is, we all know that Governor Hogan declared a state of emergency. Did this mayor of Baltimore declare a state of emergency? We don't know. And I'm trying to find out, and here's why. Because if she declares a state of emergency, city employees, the firefighters and the police, then go into a different pay bracket, and they'll actually make a little more. I can tell you that the officers down there right now are working their mandatory 12-hour shifts with no days off for 2 weeks, 14 days. If she does not declare a state of emergency, it keeps them in their regular pay scale. And if she can get money from the federal government to assist with what's happened, that money will then go into the general fund, and she doesn't have to use to pay them. And she can use it, it can be used for other things in the city. So we're trying to fight for the firefighters and police, saying, look, this is a state of emergency. And I can tell you that the governor made numerous attempts to get in touch with her on Monday, starting at 3:30, because I've talked to his administration and his people. They did not want to make the call. He did have the power to call them in, the National Guard. But, he was not ever going to step over that bound, that local jurisdiction, courtesy. So they were trying to get in touch with her to get her to make the decision. Finally, she did. So that's what I've got. Questions?
So I have the same question I asked. Why Stephanie Bowman really needs...
Oh, the one thing they're dealing with was the body camera bill. And the reason was the state had a law banning videotaping of people. I'm trying to think of what it's called. This term we use, my mind's fried. Wiretapping laws.
But he set down a bunch of bills on...
Yes. And the reason is because she can't, if state law, she can't supersede that. So she had to get permission from the state to jump up. That's why you'll see a lot of bills that we have in Annapolis that deal with local issues that are changing, like, for instance, liquor laws here in Baltimore County. Well, the state sets the mandate. They have all the laws. We have to kind of go to them to get permission. But I know the wiretapping laws, the state already had these laws. They had to pull back on the state side so that the city could do it. That was some of the issues that came up. Kevin and then this gentleman.
Mission Governor secure the corn. How does that do that? Check that wall.
I have no idea. We actually had a press conference that was supposed to be held on Tuesday, and we were all going to get briefed before the press conference on what happened, how it was done. But it got canceled Monday at, I think, 9 o'clock. I got a phone call saying, no press conference tomorrow, no meeting. He was asking about how the governor funded or secured McCormick's staying state. I don't know. I've not been briefed yet. We were going to have a briefing, but it was canceled because of what's going on. Sir, and then George.
Video recording does not have anything to do with that. You can videotape anything that you know. They have all the cameras, they have all the stage. So I don't understand why they have all the video.
Well, that's actually part of the issue that came up. I remember in one of the debates was they can have body cameras, but they can't have volume. And part of the police are saying, look, if you're going to require me to wear this, at least listen, because a lot of it happens on camera with what the guy's saying or the woman's saying in that confrontation. I'm not on the Judicial Proceedings Committee, where all those bills went. So what happens in Annapolis is the bill goes to the committees work it, and then it comes out. I'm on finance, which deals with health and insurance issues. So I don't remember all the debate because I wasn't in there, because some of them didn't make it to the floor. Others did, and the governor was actually supposed to sign them all on Tuesday, was his bill signing, but it was canceled. So it looks like May 12th he's going to sign all those bills in. Sure. The smart meter bill doesn't make it out of committee. Did not make it out of the House Economic Matters Committee. That's where it sits. Because they don't think that it needs to be passed. I mean, I don't know what their argument is. That's the only way. That's where it sits. Every year that gets put in, and it always, if you look at it, dies in economic matters. George, and then that gentleman.
I want to record it. Not everybody reads the Sun paper, so they know it's true. It's in there. But they did say in the Sun paper article that there was a $4 million sweetener deal split between the state and the county to have people from
Okay. Yeah, we were going to be briefed on Tuesday morning, but it all got canceled, so I did not know. Sir.
I do have to know on a wiretap that people videoing police have been prosecuted under wiretap statute. But like most prosecutions, people video police, federal courts have always slapped that down. So the First Amendment press protection. My question, you talked a lot about superintendent damage. And my question is, I understand that the superintendent and many of the school boards or appointed by the government, I'm originally from Texas. I'm used to Baltimore. But Baltimore County, is it strictly appointed or is it only appointed?
No, we changed it last year. Baltimore County used to be strictly appointed, but now we have a hybrid. So you've got, it doesn't take effect for another 3 years or 4 years. But I think it's 4 appointed members, and then the rest come from the councilmatic districts. No, he's appointed by the county executive. But, I'm sorry. Yeah, I apologize. Here's a gentleman that knows. He was on the school board. You're right. Doesn't the county run the search and then present it? Or the school board does it. Then I apologize.
The school system used to be great when the county executive stayed out of it. The county executive decided to get in and get pushy, and then the school board stopped listening to their own mind and started listening to what they were told by the county executive. The school system has gone downhill.
Yeah.
So the school board selects the superintendent?
Yes. It was prior to what we've got now. It used to be that way, yes.
Well, that's really a push to say that. If you want to talk sometime about it, I'll talk to you.
Is there any push to introduce a larger children system either in the county or the statewide?
Not that I know of. It's.
That's a big issue for them.
Yeah.
You have to be allowed.
No problem. Yes, sir.
I just like to second what Sue Aumann said, that I don't think that Mr. Hogan, Governor Hogan, will be as successful as he might be if we, as citizens, do not back him up. I think that part of our American system is trying to say individual self-government for the right reason and for traditional moral and social values, and that the Constitution that we heard read tonight reaffirms that right. And if we, as all individuals here, as our organization, keep the level of officials, I think we get for really strong principle government much better than we relegated to that. And the other thing is, I'm concerned about the pride in the city. I think there's an orchestration of these very subtle, but I think it's coming from this free organized with the chief of the White House. If you saw what happened in Ferguson, how sharp he's been out of the White House and back into Ferguson, and I think once that happens, other incendiaries, you'll see that and know that they instigate so much trouble. Barack Obama wants to have the national police force, and I think I have no doubt that he would instigate these things and set these things up if we could get that.
Well, I can tell you that tomorrow and Saturday are going to be very interesting downtown. This group, I think it's this lawyers out of D.C., this group that actually put together last Saturday's march and protest, are doing one this weekend. And they're talking about busing them in busing people in from Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Harrisburg. So it is going to be pretty interesting what happens over the next 48 hours. So any other questions about anything else? Annapolis, anything else going on? Well, I thank you. My district goes basically from here. I have the district here actually runs kind of on a diagonal line. So technically, I think we're in my district now because it comes across 83. But I go all the way down to Middle River and Aberdeen and up to Whiteford. So it's a pretty large area. I'm here. If you ever need anything, call me. Don't hesitate. That's what I'm here for. So thank you.